Hey, this is Dave from MetalEpidemic.com. Thank you for checking out our YouTube video. Please feel free to hit the subscribe button below if you like this type of content, and we hope you enjoy the review. What is up, guys? Dave here from Metal Epidemic, back with another album review. And for this review, Duncan Kyle and I have been checking out the new album from atmospheric death metal band Alluvial. The band's new album, Sarcoma, will be released on May 28th via Nuclear Blast Records. So, these guys have been active since around 2016, and Sarcoma will be the band's second full-length album, which follows up their debut album, The Deep Longing for Annihilation, which came out in 2017. These guys are no strangers to being in bands though. Alluvial boasts a pretty stacked lineup, including current members of Entheus, Aegean, The Merciless Concept and Glass Casket, as well as ex-members of Thyre as Murder, The Faceless, Black Crown Initiate, Suffocation, Abiotic and The Black Dahlia Murder. Sarcoma is also
either of these guys have played in many bands, or they're the biggest band ever, as in like bigger than Slipknot, like with 12 members. You can't mention all those, like, so there's clearly they've been in and out of other bands.
Yes.
Yeah, that's okay then, because I'm now picturing them being like fucking Slipknot, like Mushroom Head, like 10 of them. So
just a four-piece band. Band.
Cool.
But this is the first album of theirs to contain vocals. As guitarist Wes began to write at home, he took notice of Kevin Mueller due to his time in Suffocation. After hearing his vocals on a demo, everything simply clicked, and Kevin joined the band. After writing and producing demos at home, Alluvial cut guitars, bass, and vocals with engineer John Douglas at Atlanta, and then mixed and mastered by Jeff Dunn. Okay, so aside from we did play one of these one of the tracks from this album on our podcast. I hadn't heard of Alluvial before, even though they've had like a previous album. I had never heard of them until we played that track on the podcast. But I am aware of their kind of surrounding bands, the bands they have been in or are in at the moment. So I was quite interested to hear the rest of this release, and you can tell from the get-go that this band does come from good stock. From the first track, Ulysses, it feels and sounds like a band that have that experience behind them. It's very tight, it's very precise. Musically, it does kind of have little moments that remind you of their past bands. It does have a little bit of a Black Crown Initiate type thing going on at times. But that progressive kind of death metal vibe is also mixed with something a little bit more atmospheric, something along the lines of maybe Fallujah, or I was getting a little bit of a Seven Horns, Seven Eyes type vibe at times as well. There's even a wee touch of Scarve in there, French metal band called Scarve. I was getting a little bit of that, and the other one I was getting was Feared, who are in the kind of heavier, kind of groovier sections that remind me of Feared a little. The riffs are kind of fairly kind of polyrhythmic and quite weighty sounding, but they are coated in this kind of ambience that it really kind of adds a feeling of kind of magnitude to the album, in a kind of similar way to like kind of Gojira have done in the past. But this time around we've also got the addition of vocals on this album, and this for me I think is the key to a lot of this album's success. Their last album didn't have that vocal element, and for me, I went and checked out that album. It felt quite oversaturated in guitars, to be honest. They were kind of filling all the space with with the riffs and lead work, and I understand why they did that, because they were kind of taking the role of the vocals at times. But now, because we have vocals from Kevin Mueller, the guitar work has been kind of pulled back just a little. And I think it just allows the band's kind of sound just to kind of breathe a little bit more, and especially the vocals, which I think vocally, this is really well executed on both the kind of the gutturals, the kind of roars, and then the kind of clean melodies they've added in as well, which kind of for me they really add another layer to this band's sound. I thought the cleans on tracks like The Underlying or 40 Stories or even Sleepers Become Giants those were the kind of tracks that really left an impact on me as a listener. I felt like they really kind of stand out, and there were a couple of lines that really kind of stuck with me after it finished. 40 Stories in particular, I really like the fact that they added in a track with so much melody and kind of texture to it. Some of the cleans on that one reminded me a little bit of 12 Foot Ninja actually, which is never a bad thing. But even though they have pulled back a little on the kind of amount of kind of guitar wizardry, it's still quite an interesting album musically. I think they've got the balance much better on this release in terms of the amount of kind of lead work and solos. I think it doesn't become too dominant. I think because they've got that kind of additional layer now with the vocals, they have just kind of reined it in just a touch. It feels more tasteful on this album. And the riffs are actually really fucking good. They don't feel too repetitive or like a kind of one-trick pony. I like the fact they use a ton of like wide-ranging dynamics in the riffs as well. I think it really helped to let those kind of bigger, heavier moments be more effective. I actually think there was probably room for a few more of those type riffs, if I'm honest. If I had anything to suggest for improvement, I would have maybe put in a couple more, the kind of bigger riffs. But I think overall, this album definitely feels less kind of overcrowded than The Deep Longing for Annihilation. And because of that, I feel this album has way more standout moments. I also like the fact they kept these tracks to the point. The majority of these tracks are between 3 and 5 minutes. They don't do the typical 10-minute prog wank fest that seems to be fairly standard on these types of albums. And for that reason, the tracks never really outstay their welcome. They did add in one instrumental track, Sugar Paper, I think it was called. I'm not entirely sure it really added anything to the album, if I'm honest, but 38 minutes long, I think this album, it doesn't feel kind of bloated at all to me. Production-wise, I think they nailed the brief, to be honest. I'm not 100% sure who produced it. I'm assuming the guitarist Wes probably had something to do with it because he is also a producer. But in terms of the mix and the mastering, Jeff Dunn, I think his name is, I think he's really good at making things sound really big and heavy. I think so. This band were kind of ideal for his particular style. It definitely sounds produced, but I didn't think they overcooked it. I think it still had a bit of life to it. But I think the kind of atmospheric part of the band probably helped with that. It's not a million miles away from a Black Crown Initiate or Fallujah type production, to be honest. I really enjoyed this. I could definitely see myself going back to it. I've listened to it 4 times since we got it in for review, and I can see myself listening to it more and more. I think each time I listened to it, there was something else that I kind of picked up on, and I definitely like the clean melodies. They definitely kind of left an impact on me. So yeah, enjoyable album. Quite enjoyed it. I will go back and give that first album more of a listen. I'll listen to it once. And I know it's completely instrumental, but I'll definitely go back and check it out again. Duncan, what did you make of Alluvial and Sarcoma?
So yeah, like you say, we played it on the podcast, and I've mentioned before, I have a tendency, it's me that does the production on the editing and stuff like that on the podcast, so I get to hear those tracks a couple of times then. Yeah. I remember it sticking out to me there and then, because we tend to play a good mix on the podcast, I get a good opportunity to get a taster of what's likely to be coming down the road somewhere for an album review later on in the coming months. So I want to say the song was The Underlying. I might be completely wrong about that. But yeah, from the off, I think you're right. I think what you're hit with straight away is it ain't no amateur hour. These guys are seasoned veterans. You can just tell with the confidence and the way the songs are written. There's a real streak of this is what we do, which I really enjoyed. I liked the riffing on it. I think they're really interesting. Sarcoma, which I think is 40 Stories, is the one that has a lot of melody. The actual guitar that plays underneath the melodic chorus is really quite interesting. Because what it's doing against what you would usually get is, instead of playing these chords that are going up to follow the vocals to let them go over, the chords almost drop down and get heavier in that section, where the vocals start to like really branch out. And I thought that was just really interesting. It's just one of those things you don't often hear. It's a little technique that I thought sounded really good. I'm gonna double down with you on this. If you have a vocalist that sounds like this, there's absolutely no need for an instrumental track that runs over, it's over 5 minutes as an instrumental track here, for no reason at all. Like, make it a shorter track, make it 2 minutes, make it 2.5 minutes, and do your stuff then. All it reminded me was that this is the track without the vocals. And there was something kind of lost there, because I think the vocals are what gives this a clarity, a memorability. I think it also makes them stand out a little bit more from a lot of the other bands in this genre. A nice tone to the vocals, you know what I mean? It's as scathing as it is. The melody hits and really breaks up their sound. I also agree with you, it's weird to say this, after all those compliments, I was waiting for the absolutely tombstone crushing section to hit me that never quite arrived. And I'm not usually the person that complains about that. I'm usually the other way around, saying they should be playing all the stuff that does it. Well, but there were certain bits that felt like they were teasing up to something, and you were waiting on the drop, and it just kind of went off and did other things. And I mean, that's fine. Not every album needs to have like a crushing riff that rips my spleen out and then feeds it to me. Like, not every album has to have that, but it did feel like they were on the precipice of it a few times, and they just didn't pull the trigger. And that's an interesting choice, because that's almost like that's a confidence as well. We don't need to drop that. We don't need to do this bit here. We're confident that the next section that you're going to hear is going to be equally satisfying. And for the most part it is. I think like the big kind of standout for me was not one song felt too long, apart from the instrumental. Not one song felt too long. They all followed a very, I would say, safe at times formula in terms of the song construction, but pleasing to the ear. It's produced really, really well. Like, once again, this is one of these ones where I could pick out what everyone was doing, which is always a bonus in this genre of metal, particularly. And the addition of those vocals, I think I'm not sure I would go back and listen to an instrumental album, because the thing I liked most, the stuff that I gravitated to most on this release, was what the vocalist was doing. I found it really interesting and engaging. So to me, that's what they need to lean more into. And like I'm not saying that you can't have an instrumental track if you were an instrumental band. I'm not saying that by any stretch of the imagination. I just think it's weird that that's the bit that's the longest on the album, and it comes close to the end as well. To me, I'm like, the songs are short and they're sharp and they keep me going all the way through, and then right before the end, right before the last track, because you can't finish on an instrumental, right before the last track, you give me this elongated thing that, to me personally, kind of threw me out of the album, and then it brought me back in, because the last track, Anodyne's fucking great. So yeah, I don't know, like I say, this is not usually a genre that's aimed at me. I found it quite, don't take this the wrong way, Alluvial, if you listen to me, I found it a pleasant listen. Like, there was enough in here to make me go, well, that's an interesting choice, alright, well, that's quite clever. But not in a kind of pretentious, wanky sort of clever way where you're like, do you know what we did there? Like, it's not like that. It's just like, this is good songwriting. This makes a good song. This is a good part I'm going to put in here. And I appreciate the craft in that, because this is a genre of metal where sometimes people can be, and you mentioned it, get lost in the wankery art of, right, we're going to do a 10-minute prog song that means fucking nothing, that goes absolutely fucking nowhere and loses everyone's interest, but you know what? It's cool for me to play. I mean, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, think about the craft of your album. I actually enjoyed this a lot more than I was expecting. This is it's well done. It's well done. Like I say, I don't think I'll go back and listen to an instrumental album from them, but I will watch with keen interest to see what the band's going to be doing next, and I think they'd be really interesting to see on tour. I genuinely think, like, listening to them, I think they would be really interesting live, especially if they're coming from that kind of veteran background of those bands. These are like heavy touring bands, so these guys are going to be able to cut it live. So like I say, quite enjoyed it.
Excellent. And Kyle, what did you think?
I think there's loads to love for your average death metal fan on this album. It's really well done. I'm echoing just a lot of what you guys said. The songs weren't too long, they weren't too short. They were really, really good at what they do. I mean, they stand out on their own a heck of a lot. This ain't your granddad's metal, you know? There's a lot of modern things, but they don't push it too far with the modern stuff, and they really do stand out on their own. Like, nothing falls flat.
Yeah.
They don't end up in the traps of a lot of other death metal bands, especially ones that mix in the atmospheric stuff as well. Like the clean vocals when they come in, they're not cheesy as fuck.
Yeah.
They don't sound like they're ripped out of a pop song or some other shit, you know. And
Yeah.
it works really well. It's just as hard hitting as the heavy stuff, just in a completely different way. And I think that's all down to, like you said, Kev Miller on the vocals. And there's a couple of songs that really did that for me. One was Exponent, and the other one was 40 Stories, which is just like, whoa, these guys are on a different level than a lot of the other death metal bands you find these days. And aside from some drum fuckery, the production was really good. There definitely was some fuckery with the drums, but I mean, it's becoming more and more prevalent these days. As much as I don't like it, it wasn't too over the top, but every now and then I heard like, yeah, you could have done that better. But I mean, whatever. I mean, it sounded natural enough, and it wasn't over the top. It wasn't like some bands we've heard recently where it's just like, what the fuck? Why would you do this? So, I think so. No, I liked it. I really liked it a lot. It was especially what you said about all the song structures when you expected them to do like a big bad drop and they didn't do it. They did something else. It's like, that's great. I love that because they just went off and did their thing, which is them. Even the instrumental track I enjoyed because it was still them bringing what they were to the new album, even though they have a vocalist. They're like, okay, we were an instrumental band. We're just going to bring that back a little bit and then leave you with this incredible closing song, which I really, really liked. I think it's actually my favourite track on the album is the closing one. It's super good. And I was like, right, nice. So I hope they carry on going, and I hope this isn't another, list on another band name on the list of many band names all these guys have got to their name, because they deserve so much in the future. They're really doing good stuff, and I hope they go far and far and wide, because I'll go see them as soon as they hit Norway or anywhere close like Scotland.
Nice.
Great.
Okay. So what are we thinking rating wise for Sarcoma? This is a tough one. Because the more I listen to this, the more I like it. I'm thinking I'm going 4. I'm going 4 out of 5. I think 4 out of 5 is kind of is right for this album for me at the moment. It might creep up. You never know. I'm enjoying it each time I listen to it. It kind of sinks its hooks in a little bit deeper, so that might go up throughout the year. But at the moment, I'm probably a 4 out of 5. Duncan.
Yeah, I think that sounds right to me. I'm not liking the fact that me and you are in sync tonight. I don't mean the pop band.
Yes, girlfriend.
Yes,
I mean,
do.
like, in terms of our grades. Yeah, that's, like, to me, generally my approach to, I've told you before, my general approach to death metal is that I understand you're all really good at your instruments, and unless you are terrible songwriters, you get a 3. You know what I mean? You get a 3 from me. And then something that you do that maybe elevates it, you add an extra element in. My standard grade for death metal, like good death metal, is usually about 3.5. But like I say, there was stuff that they did that I thought was interesting. I really liked the vocals on this one. I thought they were smart and they were used smartly, and the musicianship on the album once again subverts expectation and is done smartly. So yeah, I mean, that's worth a 0.5 on top of what I would have given it. So yeah, it's a 4 from myself.
Nice. And Kyle.
I'm going to go with 4.5. 4.5.
Ooh.
I really enjoyed it. Yeah, I really did.
Nice. Nice. 4.5. Excellent. So this one drops on May 28th on Nuclear Blast Records. If you want to check these guys out, it's facebook.com/alluvial metal. I will put a link in the description below to their Facebook and any pre-orders that are available for the album. Let us know what you think. They have dropped a couple of singles from the album. Let us know what you think of them, or when you hear the album, let us know what you think of that. Happy to hear your comments. That is the review. Thanks for checking it out. Much appreciated. We'll be back with another review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
And it's gone.